Hi everyone, my name is Kara. This is Wrenly down here, and I'm on here today to tell my birth story.
What?
Just kind of jump in and yeah. So I'll start with what my birth goals were coming in to birth, like my mindset. My husband and I took the husband coached childbirth Bradley class beforehand, and it was amazing. Highly recommend. My husband absolutely thinks it's the main reason that he was able to stay calm and collected and not get overwhelmed by the birth and just help out and be there and be so encouraging and supportive and not scared himself, even when I got scared, which was awesome and super helpful. I really wanted to have a water birth at home. I had a main midwife that I loved. She's amazing. And then she lives 2 hours away, so she had an assistant that I didn't meet until near the end of my pregnancy that only lived 30 minutes away, who would come when I was further along to do appointments so I didn't have to drive that far, and who also would check me, was the one that checked me during my labor before my main midwife came. Loved her as well. They both were awesome women, and so thankful, because it's really hard to find good help for home births in this area, so it was really cool. And so my dream, my hope for my birth, my dream for my birth was to have home water birth in my home, have no complications, have a fairly quick labor, and to keep my mindset focused on the fact that everything that was happening for a reason. Like, whatever pain or uncomfortableness I was feeling, it was to bring her into this world. So like, I was 38 and a half weeks, I guess, and my grandmother came into town. We took her out to dinner before church, because our church at that point, it's now on Sundays again, but at that point was doing Wednesday night services. So, and it was a little bit far away. Our church is like 40 minutes away from us. So we took her out to dinner beforehand and then just walked over to the church, because it's in like where it was meeting was in like a downtown area. So we went out to this Thai place, and they had eggplant dippers. I'm not exactly sure what they were, but they were very good, like eggplant breaded pieces that you dip in like this sweet and chili sauce, and I love me some sweet and chili sauce. And then I got some other dish. I think it was pad thai, but I feel like I got something different, because I usually get pad thai. And I got it spicy, and I never get spicy. I always get mild, maybe medium, but I got like extra spicy, because that's another thing I heard, spice like kicks in labor. So I took that, and then we're walking over to the church, and my grandmother was like, "Hey, I think your water broke." I'm like, "What?" And apparently there was like a spot on my dress, and so I'm like, I didn't like feel anything. She's like, "Well, maybe your like water is leaking," because that's what happened with her. Like, maybe your bag of waters is just leaking. I was like, maybe. And then all of a sudden I'm like, why did I do all this like inducing labor things? Am I ready for this? Oh my goodness, I gotta clean the house, I have laundry to do, what am I doing? So then we're like, okay, well, we'll just go to church and see what happens. So I was like, I won't worry about it too much. And I still don't know exactly what that was. So then we go to church. I'm like, well, if something like things start, then we'll see. And then I was like very much in my head, because I'm like, oh my goodness, did my waters break? Like, what is happening? And we're worshiping and singing and stuff, and then I started having, and it was not at all what I expected at all. So I started having this like tightening in my chest, almost like anxiety, like it almost felt like anxiety, or like I was gonna have an anxiety attack, that then spread down and tightened down my stomach. I had no idea. I was like, this is not what a contraction is supposed to feel like. What is happening? So if they're still very high, then as the tightening happens, it can push pressure up into your chest and feel that way. Oh my goodness. Like, it felt like anxiety and then a contraction almost, or what I expected a contraction to more feel like, but it was not very painful. It was not painful at all. It was just like my stomach's tight, like I'm doing a crunch. So I kind of ignored the first couple, and then was like, maybe because this is happening rhythmically, and potentially my water might have broken, maybe I should like pay attention to these. So I tapped Joel and was like, hey, I might be having a contraction. And he's like, oh, what, really? Oh my goodness. And so we had, the people that are supposed to be at my birth, her birth, was my mother, the midwives, Joel, and then his mother. But his family lives 10 hours away. So we had to let her know sooner so that she wouldn't miss the birth. So he's like, I gotta call my mom. And I'm like, I don't know if this is, I was so worried that it wasn't the real thing. And I was like, I don't know. Little did I know what I was in for. I was like, I don't know if you should call her yet. Like, let's see. And he's like, well, I'll just let her know that it's potential so she can be prepared because it's getting late. I was like, okay. So he called her, let her know what was happening, that we didn't know for sure. And then he came back and started timing the contractions. We're worshiping, and I just would tap him whenever one started or stopped. And so there's like what's it called? Jacket? Yellow jacket. Jeez, I cannot speak. Get away. Oh no, we might have to move in. So the lighting is definitely not as pretty, but there's no yellow jacks in here. So we're just gonna finish in here. Here's my paper. So I started timing them, and they were about 12 minutes apart. So nothing like too, oh my goodness. But I was like, okay, like that's a good solid place to start. Like, I don't know if we should tell your mom to come. And she decided to go ahead and start heading that way just because she didn't know how long like it was gonna be till things were picking up, and she'd rather would just be there and not miss it. And so she started driving our way through the night. I feel so bad. So then she was driving through the night. My grandma was still staying with us because she lives a couple hours away and was staying with us those days during the week. So she gets back, and I wasn't sure if things were gonna like happen, so she offered to go stay somewhere else if I didn't want her to be there. And I was like, you know what, things aren't happening quickly, like it's fine. Then Joel was in like get ready mode. So he started, he pulled the tarp out, because there's all these things you have to be ready for your home birth. But he pulled the tarp out, laid out in the living room, started pumping up the water tub, birth tub. And we don't have a way to pump it up in here because the only pump we have is like up next to a like car thing. So he's outside pumping the water tub up. And then he asked so then we texted my midwife, and she was like, hey, in your kit that you got, there's a way to test if it's amniotic fluid, like a little swab thing. So I went to go test that. And then Joel asked my grandmother to put the mattress protector on the mattress. Well, we didn't realize, funny thing, we didn't realize until after the birth, after we were cleaning up, that like a week and a half later, the mattress protector that she put on is not like you just pull it over like a sheet. Like it is like all around the mattress. Like you have to pull out the mattress and put it over the top and then like under the bottom and zip it up. And somehow my grandmother by herself did this, and Joel felt so bad because she's like, I did not realize it was that intense, or I would have done it. I would not have asked her to do it by herself, but she did it. So I came out and the test looked negative, but I don't know if I did it right. And so we still to this day don't know what that was. I think that it was my like outer bag just leaking a little bit. I don't know for sure. As baby legs started to drop lower, I think it just put a little bit of pressure, and maybe, I don't know. And then Joel's like, what do we do? Like, is this happening? They were still about 8 minutes apart, getting a little bit more intense, but still not. It was not, I didn't have to breathe through them yet. They were just like tight. And not very comfortable, but not at all intense or taking my breath away or anything like that. So then I was like, you know what? The midwife told us, and our birth coach told us, if we can, try to sleep. So we're like, okay. So we went to bed, and I woke up multiple times from them, but I was able for the most part to sleep, which I was really grateful for. And she's sleeping. And then I probably woke up around 4:35, and I couldn't sleep anymore. I think partially because of contractions and partially because of excitement, because I thought like we're meeting baby soon. So then Joel's mom was still not in town yet because she had stopped for a couple hours to sleep during her drive because it's a long drive and in the middle of the night, really rough. So she's still a couple hours out. So Joel and I walked around the neighborhood once, did some, like I walked, there's not really a curb in our neighborhood. We're kind of in a rural area. So I like would walk on the side where the grass was, and it was like a little lower. Contractions definitely started to pick up. Still nothing awful, but they were a little closer together, like 6 to 4 minutes apart. Not miserable. I had to stop and not I could talk through them, but I couldn't move through them. Like I had to stop and give myself a second to breathe as they were happening. And they were consistently a minute long. Sometimes a little bit longer, sometimes a little bit shorter, like sometimes somewhere between like 45, 50 seconds to like a minute and 30 seconds. So we got back. I decided to contact my chiropractor because she will adjust you when you're in labor to kind of help things get going and also just to make sure baby's in the optimum position. So, and then we had a couple of things we needed to get from Target. So we went to the chiropractor. She adjusted me, it was awesome. Tried to give me a more realistic idea of how long it was going to take, and it didn't really listen. She's like, just, this is probably the real deal, but it's going to take a while. Like, things are happening slowly. That's good. And I'm like, yeah. But in my head, I'm like, baby's going to be here, like, tomorrow. I was very wrong. So then we hit Target, and we picked up just a couple of items that we needed both for the birth and to have on hand. So then we went back home. His mom got home shortly after. She took a nap. I asked how I was doing. I'm like, I don't know. Things are still happening, but not very quickly. So she went and took a nap. I made some cookies. So I was like, if people are going to be over here for the birth, might as well provide them with some cookies. And then Joel and I played a couple games. And then I don't think anything else big happened that day. We went to bed. Then the 18th, things started to pick up a little bit more. They still were not intense. I did a bunch of walking. We walked around the neighborhood. I don't even know how many times. And things, every time I walked, they would get much more intense. And I would have to breathe through them a little bit more, but still it wasn't, yeah, I'm trying to make sure I'm getting my dates right. So the 18th, which was a Friday, yeah, they were starting to pick up, but again, not awful. My mom came over for a couple hours to hang out. We watched a ton of movies, played board games. My dad came over and brought us dinner from a local Italian place. And it was actually very much what I wish things had picked up, but it's very much what I wanted early labor to look like very chill. We played games, we watched movies, we ate food. It was just there was no pressure. It was very calm, just a very good environment. I believe on the 18th, midway through the day, things picked up a little bit, and we decided to have the midwife that doesn't live so far away to come and check me just to see where I was at. So she checked me. She came over, was super sweet, checked me. And that's another funny thing. My goal was to have like one cervical check just to see that I was like going, things were happening, and then I just wanted to not be checked anymore because I wanted to just like let my body do what it needed to do. That did not end up happening because labor wasn't progressing, so they had to keep checking. So she checked me, and I was 50% effaced and 3 centimeters. So things were happening, which was good. That was encouraging. I remember that check being like, okay, like that means I'm in labor. Like I'm not just going crazy. Because part of me was like, maybe I'm making like, are these just intense Braxton Hicks? Like, am I making it up? This is not exactly what I thought labor would feel like. So then she left because it wasn't anything insane, and told me to kind of continue the same things I'm doing. I tried the Miles circuit, which is a series of exercises that helps bring baby lower. And then we went to bed, and I slept until 2, I think a.m. on and off. And then at 2, I cannot sleep through them anymore. I got up. Joel got up too with me. So I got out, and Joel took a little nap because he was exhausted. And I laid down with him for a little bit and tried to rest. And I slept for maybe an hour, but on and off it was not. They were definitely more intense than I could still kind of talk through them, but it took a lot more focus. And then I don't know if I could talk through them at that point actually. But anyway, so then Joel slept for a little bit. My mom hung out with me. I had some cereal because I did not have an appetite. It was definitely nauseous, but I was trying to eat because I didn't know how long it was going to be. Labor continued that day. We did the Miles circuit again, walked a bunch more, and then things started to pick up that afternoon. They were about 4 to 3 minutes apart. Some of them, it was a weird, so it would happen where one was like 3 minutes. So I'd have one, and then 3 minutes later I'd have another one, and then right after I'd have another one that was more intense. So instead of where usually at a minute mark, it would like start to die down, and then it would end. Mine would start to die down and then lift back up and get even more intense. And then do a normal. So it was like 2 back-to-back contractions, one that was not too bad and then one that was very intense. And I knew in the middle of having one, if it wasn't as intense, that I was going to have the intense one right afterward. And then I would have like a 3-minute break, and then I'd have one that was intense. So I definitely could still handle them, but they were more, I still wouldn't say painful at that point. They were just more intense, took all of my focus rather than just being something that was happening. So that continued all afternoon. We tried to play some games, but I couldn't really focus through them because my contractions were back to back. And then they just continued that way and got a little bit more intense. So nearing the evening, I remember I was on the couch and Joel was in front of me timing them, and I was just leaning over, and they were rough, and he decided to call the midwife to see, like, okay, maybe we should have her checked again. So the midwife came, and they decided, because everybody thought, like, this is happening, baby is coming soon. So my main midwife was driving the 2 hours, and the assistant came over. So I got in the tub and was breathing through them. You know, Joel set up this, had my mom and his mom set up this very nice environment with the candles set up everywhere, and music playing. I had this birth playlist. It's just I had this thought, I'm like, baby's coming, like, this is perfect. This is such a good environment. And so then my main midwife got there. They brought me into the other room and checked me, and I was exactly the same as I'd been 24 hours before. I cried a lot. I was so defeated because it was intense. Things were happening, and I wasn't progressing, and it was really frustrating. So the midwives sat me and my mom and Joel's mom and Joel down and was like, okay, you can't keep doing this. Like, you can't be in intense labor without progression. So we're going to stop labor. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to take a nice warm shower. You're going to relax in the water some more to try to help slow things down. You're going to take a Benadryl to knock you out, and then she got some homeopathic things. So I did all those things. I was very defeated. She's like, stop walking, try to take it really easy. If things start to pick up because you're moving around too much, like, stay in bed, relax. You need to give your body a rest. Like, it's not going to progress if you're exhausted. So I did all the things, was able to sleep for the most part through the night, and after taking the Benadryl, and I was like so defeated. I was so sad. The rest of that week, I just had stop and go labor. Like, I would have hours without like any contractions, and then I would have more intense ones if I was moving around more. And so it was very much on and off, and just very, very defeating, because it would start and then it wouldn't, and it would slow down, and I was just so tired of it. So then it was a good week, though. I got a lot of time with my awesome mother-in-law, and we got to connect. And then my mom came over a lot to spend time, because I kind of was on a version of bed rest, and spent time with me, and it was a very sweet time, even though it was hard waiting. Joel stayed home a couple days, but then he went back to work for part of the week because we didn't know when labor was going to happen, and he didn't want to miss a ton of work. I guess 4 days later. Anyways, I texted the midwife and was like, hey, today's her due date. Can I start walking around? Like, not purposely trying to get anything started, but can I not be worried about it as much, trying to get things going? Because that was week 39. So now we were on her due date. And the midwife was like, yep, don't try purposefully anything to get things going, but you can start moving and doing your normal stuff. So the day before and that day, I was having it was very uncomfortable pressure down low from her dropping. Like, it just felt like my bones were like stretching apart almost, like down there. It was not comfortable. But I was like, you know what? Maybe it means something's gonna happen. It's okay. So then the 24th, Tanya and I, my mother-in-law, were home all day, or we were at home, and we're like, we don't want to be home all day again. Let's get out of the house. Now you can walk. Let's go. So we decided to go to the mall. We got Cheesecake Factory for late lunch, I guess, and then we're going to walk around the entire mall and just look at shops and get distracted and not worry about it. And what's so funny is that night, my mom, before any of this happened, had a theory that she was going to be born on the strawberry moon, and that night was the strawberry moon. So we went to Cheesecake Factory, got some good food, and I started having contractions. But I did not want to tell her that I was having contractions, because I was like, maybe they're going to go away again, just like they have last week. I don't want to say anything and then get our hopes up and it not be anything. But they were definitely more stomach focused, like uterine focused. I didn't feel them in my chest anymore. They were very much my stomach tightening and noticeable. Like it was a different sensation for sure. So I would just like try to not react when they were happening because I didn't want her to know that I was having them, because I didn't want to get her hopes up or my hopes up. I was having them, but I decided to try to ignore them and see if they continued. So then we had food and then started walking around the mall, and they definitely started picking up around the mall. And I would try to time it for when I was like doing something that I could stand still. So like we'd be walking through the mall and then we'd stop at a store and I'm like, oh, one's starting to build. So I'd like grab like a candle and pretend I'm smelling it. And I'm like, because I was having one and I had to like, I could not walk through them. They were definitely more intense. Not painful again at that point, but intense. And so I was trying very hard to not make it clear that was happening yet. So we walked around the mall. It was very enjoyable. I'm so glad we got to do that. And then we went out to the car. When we got to the car, that was if they're still happening when I sit down after walking around, I'll let her know. So we drive, the mall's about 30 minutes from us. So we're like halfway home, and I let Tanya know, I'm like, it might be nothing, but I have been having some slight contractions. So I said, I've been having some light contractions. She's like, okay, that's good. Cool. She's like, do I need to let Joel know? Because he was still at work. I'm like, no, I don't think they're anything intense yet. We'll just get home and see what happens. So we got home. Her and I did some coloring. They're about 4 to 5 minutes apart, but not too intense. Joel got home, and I casually said that something might be happening, but I was really worried that it was going to be another false alarm. And I was not mentally ready for another false alarm. So I was like, we'll just, if it's real, then it'll pick up. Like, let's not put pressure on it. So Joel and I took a shower to kind of just relax. I had some more of that really intense pelvic pressure. And then we went to bed. And I think that I woke up, around 1 or 2 a.m., I woke up and they were intense. Like, could not communicate through them, very much had to focus. And I didn't wake Joel up at first because I was like, I'll just like see if this continues. And I would I was in the bed and I'd lean over I'd be on my hands, lean on my elbows over a pillow. And that helped ease some of the like pressure, but it was very intense. But he woke up and he was like, this seems like the real deal. And I'm like, I don't know. And then I have one and it's like really intense. And I'm like, I don't know if we should let people know yet. I just don't want it to be not happening again. So he was like, no, I think this is happening. So he called my mom and she came over and she got there and was like, hey, so is the midwife on the way? And Joel was like, no, Kayla doesn't want me to call her yet. She's like, okay, you should call the midwife. So the assistant midwife, it's only 30 minutes away, started heading over. Tanya got the yoga ball out for me and I leaned over that for a little bit. And we had the yoga mat out for me to like kneel on because we have wood floors and it helped a lot with my knee pain. So I highly recommend if you have a cushy yoga mat, that helps. And I leaned over and that helped some. They were definitely intense. Like I had to squeeze something when they were happening. They were about 2 to 3 minutes apart and definitely lasting at least a minute. Very intense. So then the midwife came. She checked me again. I had made no progress. I was exactly the same as I was a week ago. And I, again, was devastated. I cried even more than the first time. I was so upset and they were like intense. It was just like, before when they were checking me, I could like relax when it was happening, but these were happening so close together and so intense that I'm literally like having contractions while she's checking me. And I was like, really? Like, it's not happening. So frustrating. So then she said, I'll call the main midwife, but you need to do all the things you did before to stop labor because you're not ready still. So then I took the Benadryl, I got in the water, I did all the things, and then my mom and Tanya looked up what could be causing it. Like, why am I having intense labor without progression still? And I have scoliosis. Maybe I'll do a video talking about that if you're interested in that at some point, my journey with that. But my hips are crooked. Part of the reason I went to the chiropractor very regularly. And so apparently when baby is, scoliosis being the cause of it, when baby is trying to drop lower but your hip is getting in the way, it can make where they're not putting the right amount of pressure down low, which is what helps you progress. So we tried, I don't know what it's called, but what it was recommended was every time I was in the water, and then every time I'd have a contraction, the moms and Joel would help me stand up, and I would lift my belly up and in to try to help bring baby out of my, out of low, and then drop back down, because basically she wasn't in the right position is what our theory was. So we did that multiple times. Not comfortable at all to try to stand up during intense contractions and hold your stomach. It was not enjoyable, but I do think it helped. So then after that, my mom and Tanya and Joel was like, okay, let's see if you can get some rest. So I laid down, and maybe 30 minutes passed before I woke up, and I couldn't even like speak between them or between the contractions, like let alone when what was happening. They were rolling like one after another on top of each other. I was just whimpering through them. Even between, like when I had that break, I'd just be laying there in the same position, just hoping I would get a break, and it wouldn't happen. Like maybe 15 seconds between contractions, if that much. Like it was one after the other, and I was just rolled on my side. Joel ended up waking up and holding me, and so they helped. I guess, I don't remember this. I don't know how I got from there to the tub, but they refilled the tub with warm water and put me in the water, and that helped a lot. I was able to have like 30 seconds between them. They were like 1.5, 2 minutes apart, so I'd get actually 30 seconds of break, which was very good. It helped things slow down a little bit, and I was able to communicate during that break rather than just being like unconsolable during them like I was when I was a little bit of, well, he read to me for a little bit to just kind of help try to calm my mind, because my mind was all over because labor was happening, and then we were trying to stop it, and now it's happening, but like fast and intense, and I don't know where I'm at. Am I progressing? Is this for nothing? Like my mind was all over. So he read to me for a little bit, which helped a lot. And then he held my hand and took a little nap in the recliner next to the water tub, or birth tub, and that helped. Holding his hand, being present even while he was sleeping, because he needed rest, and I needed him to be able to be there when things got more intense. So that was good that he got some sleep. And I kind of tried to fall asleep between contractions. Again, like maybe the break was a minute at most. It was not, my contractions from then on were 2 minutes apart or closer. So I did not get much of a break, but I would try to sleep between them, and that helped. So then labor continued, contractions continued. They're pretty intense. Things picked up some, but it was still about the same level of like definitely painful, definitely intense, took my breath away, took work and purposefulness and breathing to work through them. And Joel would have me get out and go pee every like hour or two, because it's one thing our birth class recommended, because if baby drops down low and then blocks up the bladder and you have a full bladder, it can cause issues. That was the worst. I don't know how people labor on the toilet. It's supposed to help you. Maybe that's why they were so intense. It helps you like open up, but I could not. I was like literally pee, get out of there. And so those were awful. Every time I got out of the water, everything got way more intense. I like lived in the water for hours and hours and hours, because anytime I got out of the water, it was like, oh my goodness. But my mom was very, it was hard, but it was very good. Every time I got out, she's like, okay, try to walk slowly, because walking helps move baby lower, don't rush, don't lean over, try to stand up tall. And I'm like, I can't. And so then we did that multiple times to go to the bathroom and stuff. And on the toilet, I would like holding Joel's hands, just like, oh my goodness. So then around 11 a.m., I never said the words, but in my head, I'm like, we might have to go to the hospital, because I didn't know if things were progressing. And all I said was, I turned to Joel and I'm like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And he texted the main midwife and was like, okay, is there anything we can do to make things happen or stop? Because they can't keep being in this middle ground of like not progressing but happening. And so she suggested potentially trying castor oil and doing this oh my goodness, I forgot what it's called, mile circuit again. So I tried to do the mile circuit, could not do it. You have to lay. One of the positions you do is lay with your leg up. My contractions got so intense, I was like, I cannot do this. And so then I think at that point she's very low, so it wasn't really helpful. It just made things more intense. So then Tanya went and left to go get castor oil. She left to go do that, and Joel called the assistant midwife just to come and check me. And in my head, I never said it out loud, but in my head I was like, if I've not progressed, I don't want to do this anymore. So she got there, and I was not doing well. Like, I was crying, I was emotional, I was overwhelmed, and contractions were, because I was out of the water, rolling one after the other pretty intensely. So then she checked me, and she got this big smile on her face, and she's like, you're still about 3 centimeters, but you're 100% a phase. So that means things are happening. You're gonna have a baby in your arms by tonight. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. And then she told me that I needed to relax, that she could feel my bag of waters. And when I was having a contraction, I would tighten around it rather than letting things like go down, because I was fighting my contraction rather than letting my body do what it needed to do, which is a lot easier said than done. But once I knew that, okay, I'm gonna hold my baby, like things are happening, I am progressing, there is hope. I was able, like the moms and Joel said that my perspective completely switched. I was like, I can do this. And so the rest of the next few hours of laboring, or I guess the next hour and a half of laboring, because the assistant midwife came around noon. So then about 2 hours of laboring, I was able to just be very intentional about relaxing, breathe through my contractions more purposefully. I was very present and connected to my body rather than fighting against what my body was doing. So that was really cool. That part of labor was more what I wanted my entire labor experience to be. And it wasn't previous because I didn't think things were happening. I didn't feel like I could trust my body. And now I felt like, okay, I can trust my body. Kind of. I still was very hesitant. I'm like, are you doing what you're supposed to do? Are you progressing? So then Tanya actually ended up getting me this mug that said Super Mama on it, because my mom called. She's like, you don't need to get the castor oil. Come back. Like, things are happening. The assistant midwife left because I wasn't in active labor yet, because 5 centimeters is like considered active labor. She said that she would guess I would dilate about a centimeter an hour or somewhere around there. So she would guess it would be another like 7 to 8 hours. That just expect probably another 7 to 8 hours. And I'm like, you know what? I can do 7 to 8 hours. I can do that. As long as I know there's an end, I can do that. So I got back in the water, worked through contractions for the next 2 hours, and then they got intense. They got very, very intense. And I became defeated again, because in my head, I was like, is this transition? And I'm like, there is no way I went from 3 centimeters to transition this quickly in 2 hours. Like, there's no way. And so I was very defeated then, and it became very hard to relax through contractions again, because in my head, I'm like, there's no way. I can't do this anymore. And I literally, oh, you're having a dream. I literally was like, I think I said, because I was also exhausted because I'd been up all night and I'd taken a Benadryl, so I was like very exhausted. And I remember saying something like, I just want a break. How do I hit pause or something like that? Joel, Tanya, my mom were so comforting and helpful during that time. They made sure to keep me hydrated and love on me. But my dog also, Chase, was like so sweet. He was like always laying next to us, always present, being very like aware of what was happening, and just very loving, which is just so cool, because I didn't really realize that in the moment. I was so internal, but looking at the pictures, he was just very present and part of it, which is just really cool. Yeah. So then, I think right about then, right at 2 hours after the midwife had checked me, I went to the bathroom again. Joel had me go to the bathroom. I was not happy going to the bathroom. I was like crying, because so intense on the toilet, so intense. And then Joel sits, so I was going to the bathroom, and our toilet faces the bathtub, and so he's sitting on the rim of the bathtub, like holding my hands as I'm peeing. And he very calmly like looks at me. He's like, hey, don't freak out, but I think you just lost your mucus plug. And I was like, what do you mean? As I'm like contracting and in pain. He's like, it's okay. When this contraction ends, I swear I had like dime-sized like deer in headlights eyes. Like, what does that mean? And so he was like, when this contraction ends, I'm gonna leave you here for a second, and I'm gonna go let your mom know so she can let the midwife know, and everything's okay. So I was like, okay. So he went and did that, and I didn't really fully process it. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm assuming that's when I like began to dilate very quickly, and so that's when I had like my bloody show. So then we got back in the water, and Joel told me, he's like, I should have just said that I thought it was transition, because he was scared to say that and then be wrong, but he thought it as well, because I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is so intense. So I probably had about an hour and a half, because that would have been about 3:30 of like, maybe not even, probably an hour of intense transition. And then I felt like I needed to push. I was like, I need to push. Like, my body was literally trying to push. And Joel's mom and my mom were like, no, you can't push. There's nobody here. There's no midwives here. They're supposed to be here. So they like call the main midwife and the assistant, and she says that she'll start driving, but she's 2 hours away. And the assistant is like, I'll head over. And I'm like, I have to push. Like, and they're like, no, don't push. Like, we need to make sure things are okay. And we're not ready to deliver a baby. So I'm having to, that was the worst part of it all, having to fight my body to not push, because my body was ready to push. My body was ready to push. And so, literally, by the time the assistant got there, I wasn't pushing actively, but my body was pushing. Like, I couldn't stop it. And I never thought I was gonna be someone that would like yell or scream. I was screaming through contractions, and they were intense. So the midwife got there, she listened to a couple contractions, and she was encouraging me to do it. She's like, breathe down, like you're trying to bring baby down. Imagine you're breathing baby down, like when you're making noises, try to make very gruntal, like pushing baby down noises. And so I did that, and I do think that helped in the end with my pushing period being shorter. So then she was like, hey, can I check you? And I was so scared to get checked. Are you still sleeping? Hi. Because I did not want her to say that I was like, oh, you're 6 centimeters, 4 more hours. I was like, I cannot do this 4 more hours. So she finally convinced me to get checked, and she said I did not have to get out of the water, because I was like, I can't get out of the water. If I get out of the water, I'm done. I can't do it. Yeah, I don't think I got out of the water again after that. So I was like, I can't get out of the water. So she said, I'll check you in the water. So she checked me. She said, so the way she said it was so confusing at first. So she said, you're 10 centimeters, but your bag of waters is right there. Or she said, you're 10 centimeters and baby's head is so low, but your bag of waters is right there. So I assumed that meant I couldn't push yet because my water hadn't broken. And so I was like, okay. So I start another contraction, intense, like fighting the urge to push. And then my mother-in-law and my mom were like, you can push. I was like, I turned to the middle. I was like, really? She's like, yeah, you can push. So I started to push, and I think that it was the first contraction pushing that my pushing made my water break, which is a very weird sensation. It very much felt like a water balloon like bursting between my legs. Not painful or anything, just like, poof. And I like looked up. I was like, my water just broke. Pushing, which a lot of people disagree with me, was amazing. That was the best part of labor for me overall. Like, I was so present. I was able to feel baby moving lower. I did not feel pain. I honestly would not say that I felt pain. Like, the contractions were very painful before, like very painful. But as soon as I started pushing, the pain went away. Like, it was still very intense, but it was more so like a workout that you're doing. Like, when you push yourself a little further than you think you can, not painful. Like, it was intense, but it was not painful. My contractions were not painful. Even when she was crowning and stretching, like, it was uncomfortable. It was like, whoa, that is intense. I didn't know my body could do that, but I still would not say really painful, which I'm so thankful for, because the rest of my labor was very mentally hard and very painful. So I started pushing, and I literally was like laughing and talking between them, but also when they were happening. Like, I was like, one thing that I think helped with my tearing as well, TMI, but I would feel when I was pushing it, and I could feel her head getting like starting to come out. Remember, I like felt her hair, and I was like, she's got hair, Joel, do you want to feel? And he's like, I'm good. And he was in the water in front of me, I was so proud of him and how he did. He was amazing and so encouraging. He would help hold me like in the position I wanted to be in. It was very loving, and it was just amazing. The entire labor experience, he was amazing. And so then I pushed for about an hour and 15 minutes, and then I felt her head start to come out, and like, her head's coming out. And I was like, I said something like, I'm stretching. And so then the midwife had Joel shine a light to see, because she wanted to make sure that her head wasn't already out. But baby's head was starting to come out, but I was very purposeful about not pushing too fast, because I really did not want to tear. And even though it was intense, I was like, I'm going to take my time with it, because I'll be thankful for it later. So then I remember I was pushing, and I looked out, because we have this really big window in our living room, and I looked out, and I saw the main midwife like running, and it was raining, running through the rain to the door, and she like came in, dropped her bags, her pulling her glove on while baby is coming out. So her head came out, and then I like had one last push, and everything else came out. And usually the head comes out, and then there's a break, and then the rest of the body came out. But mine was like one big push, and all of her came out. But she was smaller too. So the midwife literally is like, gets there right as Wrenly's being born. And I was the one that pulled her up. And I do wish that moment had been a little bit less stressful, because I pulled her out and I thought that her cord was wrapped around her neck, but it ended up, it was like down and around her foot. So I'm holding her, not sure what to do, like against me, but there's the cord, and then the maid midwife came in and helped untangle her. But somehow in the process of that, like the assistant and the maid trying to help and me holding her, the cord got pulled, and that's not good. So blood started coming out of, or blood was happening. There was a lot of blood. And I don't know how Joel did so good, because he does not do good with blood. And so he was amazing. And so that was a little bit scary. And she's like, okay, we need to get you out of the water so that we can make sure, like, you can birth your placenta and make sure that it's good. I was a little bit nervous about it. My midwives were very calm about it. Like, it was not a scary thing. They were incredible. If they had panicked or reacted any different way, I think it would have been even more stressful for me. So then I tried to push the placenta out, but now that I didn't have all the pressure from her head, it was very hard for me to figure out how to push. So the midwife just had me stand up, and then my placenta came out and there was no issues. We realized later on that, or then when the midwife checked to make sure that, because the worry is if the placenta detached from the wall before it was ready, there could be pieces left. But my placenta was intact. The reason that there was all the blood was, I guess, when the cord got pulled, the part of the cord had ripped. So we were okay. So then I sat there for a little bit and snuggled her, and Joel went in to take a quick shower while they checked me out to see if I had torn. I had no tears, thank goodness, no tears. I had what they called a rug burn. Basically just like a soft spot that I guess when she came out just rubbed wrong, so it was a sore spot, but not a tear. Basically like a road rash. But no tears, which I was so grateful for. So then Joel got out of the shower and he held her for the very first time, and then the midwives helped me get dressed, or not, yeah, dressed. They helped me get a pad on, and they laid down some like little mats in our bed and helped tuck me into bed. And I laid down and got to snuggle her for a little bit, and it was perfect. It was so calm, and just, there was no pressures on time frame. There was no, it just was, I got to just lay there with my husband and my baby, and it was amazing. I don't know how long that was, but while we snuggled, the midwives and our moms helped clean up everything, which was really awesome. I was born at 5:15 p.m. And then after they finished that, and after we got probably about an hour of like golden hour time, skin to skin, snuggling her, nursing her for the first times, then they came and weighed her and checked her out, made sure there were no issues. She looked great. She was 6 pounds, 11 ounces. And 19.5 inches tall, and was amazing. So she was just very focused, could lift her head up. She looked amazing, had no signs of like tongue ties or anything, and was just great. Her reflexes were all amazing, and she did so good. And so my dad and siblings came over the night that she was born and brought us dinner from a local place that I really wanted. Dinner and dessert. And yeah, then we just snuggled and got to enjoy our sweet little baby that we had waited for so long. And so she was born on June 25th, 2021 at 5:15 p.m. and was 6 pounds, 11 ounces, 19.5 inches, and absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. And yeah, so that is my birth story, her birth story. It was definitely a little bit longer than I had hoped, and a little bit more all over, but I'm so thankful for all of it. Like, all of it was good, but I'm especially just the ending and how I got to just have that joyful, trusting my body, letting it work to have her born. Thank you so much for watching and listening to my story. Sorry it's a little long-winded. There was just a lot to say. And I'm so grateful for you being on here. Please subscribe and comment down below your birth story or your experience, or what you thought of my birth story. What you're interested in seeing. If you have any follow-up questions tied to home birth, how we prepared, the follow-up appointments, anything like that. Let me know. I loved it, and my hope is that I am blessed to have all of my babies at home. God willing, let's hope. So again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Please subscribe and comment, and I will be back soon. We gotta go. Say bye. Mwah.